Clara stood in my parlor in Charleston, her smile sharp as a cracked oyster shell, while her lawyer opened a leather portfolio on my coffee table like he was dealing cards for my funeral. I didn't flinch. Instead, I leaned forward and said evenly, "Perfect timing, but before we sign anything, let's swing by the courthouse. They've been waiting for the evidence I delivered yesterday." The smirk slid right off her face, draining faster than the tide leaving the harbor. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. You're probably wondering how a 70-year-old widow ended up standing toe-to-toe with the daughter-in-law who thought she could steal my home of 40 years. Well, this tale starts with the most humiliating day of my life and ends with the most satisfying. 3 days earlier, I'd watched my only son Daniel marry Clara in St. Michael's Church, the same brick sanctuary where I'd said "I do" to his father back in 1985. The organ swelled, the stained glass glowed, and for one fragile moment, I thought maybe this woman would honor our family, especially since she was carrying what I believed would be my first grandchild. Foolish hope. The reception was at the Charleston Yacht Club, a place where I'd once served drinks to make ends meet after my husband's passing. I'd scraped together $20,000 to contribute a lifetime of pinching pennies, cutting coupons, and riding the city bus instead of keeping a car. "Genevieve has been such a help," Clara gushed to her friends, her syrupy voice making my skin prickle. "She's been living with us for months, helping with the down payment on our dream house. So generous." The table clapped politely, but their eyes flickered toward me, pity thinly veiled. I knew the script. Poor old woman, shuffled into her son's spare room, clinging to relevance. What Clara omitted was the scheme. 3 months earlier, she'd convinced Daniel that my townhouse was too dangerous for someone my age. "What if I fell on the stairs?" she'd cried. Before I could resist, I was boxed up and moved in with them. Meanwhile, the $20,000 I'd offered as a gift had quietly morphed into a loan, to be repaid when convenient. But the final blow landed during the speeches. Clara raised her glass, smiled at the guests, and delivered a line that cut sharper than any knife. "She's practically family." Practically. As though after 30 years of sacrifice, I still had to audition for my place. Daniel stood, champagne flute catching the chandelier light, beaming at his new bride. "I want to thank everyone who made this day possible," he began. "My beautiful wife, our families, and of course my mother. She's always been there when we needed her." Polite applause. Normal so far. Then Clara rose elegant, lace catching the glow, and the room fell quiet. "I'd also like to say something about Genevieve," she said, smiling so brightly it could have powered the sconces. "She's been living with us for months, and I've learned so much about family loyalty from her." My chest loosened a notch. Maybe I'd misjudged her. "Maybe," she went on, savoring the word. "She's taught me that real mothers never stop taking care of their children, no matter how old they get. Some mothers, when sons marry, step back and let the wife take over." A delicate pause. "But not Genevieve. She's shown me a mother's job is never really done." The applause turned unsure, fragmenting into coughs and clinks of silver. "Genevieve's even helping us financially because that's what mothers do," Clara added, voice sugar sweet. "They sacrifice everything for their children's happiness. It's inspiring to see someone so selfless." Silence rushed in, cold and absolute. I felt every gaze land on me as the label settled. Dependent, clinging, still funding her grown son. The worst wasn't the room. It arrived the next morning. I came downstairs to their kitchen, Clara's new phrase, and found her seated with a man in a navy suit, leather portfolio open beside his coffee. "Good morning, Genevieve," Clara chimed. "This is Mr. Ashford from Trad Street Legal. We need to review a few papers." I poured myself coffee, willing my hands to steady. 42 years of motherhood had trained me to recognize an ambush. "What kind of papers?" Clara exchanged a pleased glance with the lawyer. "Daniel and I have been talking. You've been so generous with the house down payment, and we want to make sure you're properly cared for as you get older." "What does that mean exactly?" I asked. Mr. Ashford folded his fingers. "Mrs. Whitmore, your son and daughter-in-law have arranged a placement at Magnolia Harbor Assisted Living Lovely Facility, 24-hour care. We've already secured a deposit and drafted a transfer on death deed and a durable power of attorney so your affairs are handled seamlessly." My mug landed harder than I intended. A deed and a power of attorney. "Purely precautionary," Clara purred. "It'll give everyone peace of mind." I smiled, then small, razor thin. The same smile I'd worn 3 days later when Clara walked into my parlor with her lawyer to finish what they'd started. "Perfect," I said, sliding my phone onto the table. "Because before any signatures, we'll be making a quick stop at the Charleston Police Department. They've been expecting the documents I sent them yesterday." "Without asking you, we wanted it to be a surprise," Clara said, voice gentle, eyes hard as flint. "Daniel's been worried about you living alone, and frankly, Genevieve, you've seemed a bit forgetful lately." Forgetful. The word hit like a slap. I was 70, not 90. My mind was sharper than most half my age. But Clara had been building this narrative for weeks, hadn't she? Little comments about misplacing things, corrections, when I remembered events differently than she did. "I've also been forgetful," I said evenly. "Or are you hoping I won't remember that this house carries my name on the deed alongside Daniel's?" Her smile didn't move, but something tightened behind her eyes. "Actually, Genevieve, that's part of what we need to discuss. Daniel and I have decided to refinance. It would be simpler if the property were solely in our names. Cleaner paperwork, you understand. And your $20,000 contribution? Consider it a wedding gift," she said sweetly. "After all, you want your son happy, don't you?" The lawyer shifted, checking his watch, no doubt wondering how long this paperwork review would take. He had no idea he was witnessing daylight robbery in a Charleston parlor. "Where's Daniel?" I asked. "Shouldn't he be here?" "He's at the marina," Clara said. "Money talk stresses him out, so I'm handling it." Of course. Daniel has always sidestepped confrontation, especially about money. When he was 12 and wanted a bicycle, he slid a note under my door. When he dinged my car at 17, his friend called me with the news. And now, at 42, he was still sending intermediaries to do his dirtiest work. "Mrs. Whitmore," the lawyer said gently, "according to these documents, you'd be signing away your claim to the property in exchange for having assisted living costs covered for the first year, 1 year. They were buying me out of my own investment for a single year of institutional quiet. And after that year?" I asked. Clara lifted a delicate shoulder. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Maybe you'll have adjusted by then. Maybe you'll like it so much you won't want to leave." The audacity was breathtaking. A wedding toast about loyalty, the move to establish dependence, and now the final act to strip my assets and freedom. But here's the thing about underestimating someone. Quiet water carves stone with patient, relentless, unstoppable pressure eventually, always. It only works if they don't see it coming. I rose from the table. "I need time to think about this." For a heartbeat, Clara's mask slipped. "Genevieve, Mr. Ashford has other appointments today. It would be more convenient if we handled this now." "I'm sure it would," I said, "but I'm not signing anything today." The lawyer exhaled. Even he looked relieved. "Of course, Mrs. Whitmore, take whatever time you need. These are significant decisions." After they left, I sat alone in the living room I'd helped furnish, in the house I'd helped buy. Clara had made one crucial mistake. She forgot I'd been Daniel's mother for 42 years. I'd survived his schemes long before she arrived, and I'd learned the long game. That afternoon, while Clara slipped out for a post-wedding manicure, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went through my paperwork. From the fireproof box relocated somewhere safe to their closet at Clara's urging, I pulled exactly what I needed: the original deed listing Daniel Whitmore and Genevieve Whitmore as owners, the canceled check for $20,000, memo down payment, and, most important, the durable power of attorney Daniel had pushed 6 months ago. Clara had sold it as a precaution. "Just in case something happens, Genevieve, he can help without the courts. It's common at your age." I read every line 3 times before signing. What Clara never learned was that I'd asked my attorney to add one clause. The POA was conditional on mental competency, to be certified by 2 independent physicians. If I remained able to manage my affairs, the authority was void. And despite Clara's whispers, my mind was sharp as ever. My phone buzzed. "Daniel, sorry I missed the meeting. How did it go with the paperwork?" I stared a moment, the boy who once slid apology notes under my door, now asking by text about signing away my rights, as if I were a task to be delegated. "We'll discuss it when you get home," I typed. The reply arrived instantly. "Staying at Tom's tonight. Wedding recovery long weekend. Clara can catch me up tomorrow." Wedding recovery. Married less than 48 hours and already avoiding home. I closed the fireproof box, slid deed and check into my handbag, and opened a note titled, Sequence. Step 1. Call my doctor. Step 2. Call a second. Step 3. Call Charleston police about the documents I'd emailed yesterday. Or maybe he was avoiding facing what they'd tried to do to me. That evening, Clara ordered Chinese takeout and we ate in silence. She seemed confident I'd come around, that the pressure of time and her patient manipulation would eventually wear me down. Genevieve, she said as we cleared the cartons, I hope you know everything we're doing is because we love you. Daniel worries about your safety, your future. This arrangement would give him peace of mind. I'm sure it would, I replied. Magnolia Harbor really is lovely. They have activities, social hours, even a library. You'd make new friends, have people your own age to talk to. People my own age. As if I'd somehow become incompatible with the world by virtue of living through a few administrations. Have you visited this place? I asked. Of course, Daniel and I toured it last month. The staff is wonderful and the rooms are spacious, much more appropriate for someone with your needs. My needs. There was that phrase again, as if being 70 automatically created a list only Clara could identify. What exactly are my needs, Clara? She blinked. Well, you know senior needs. Medical supervision, social interaction with peers, structured activities, support that becomes necessary as we age. I nodded. And you've determined I need these things because… Genevieve, you're nearly 70. Living independently becomes more challenging at your age. We're just being proactive. Nearly 70. I had turned 73 months ago, but Clara kept rounding me in whatever direction served the moment, fast-forwarding or rewinding me toward incompetence. I see, I said. When did you and Daniel decide I was no longer capable of making my own decisions? Patience frayed at her smile. We're not saying you're incapable. We're saying it's time to be realistic about your limitations. Limitations that, coincidentally, included owning property they wanted to control. That night, I lay awake in the spare bedroom that had once been my temporary solution and was apparently, in Clara's mind, my last night of freedom. She'd made it clear Magnolia Harbor would happen with or without my cooperation. Use the power of attorney, claim I was forgetful, unsafe. It was her second mistake. She assumed a woman who raised a son, worked shifts, buried a husband, and rebuilt a life from nothing would be easy to move like furniture. I am many things, but I am not movable. Tuesday morning, I woke early and made my blueberry pancakes, the recipe I've cooked since Daniel was 5, when he swore he'd buy a big house someday. I wanted to help him reach that dream. I never imagined he'd use it to cage me. These smell wonderful, Clara said, entering in silk pajamas, coordinated at dawn. What's the occasion? No occasion, just felt like cooking. She sat and accepted a plate, cutting the pancakes into tidy squares. I hope you've had time to think about our conversation yesterday, Genevieve, Mr. Ashford called. He can come back this afternoon if you're ready to move forward. I've been thinking, I said, settling across from her. Good. I know it's hard to let go of independence, but sometimes the people who love us must make difficult decisions on our behalf. I tasted warm berries. May I ask you something, Clara? Of course. What made you decide I needed assisted living? She blinked. Well, as I said, your age, your safety. No, I mean specifically. What incident made you think I wasn't safe living alone? It's not about one incident, Genevieve. It's about overall vulnerability. But there must have been something that triggered it. A fall? Confusion? Leaving the stove on? Not exactly. Wandering at night? Getting lost? Medication mishaps? Genevieve, it's not about waiting for something terrible. It's about being proactive. So you can't point to a single instance demonstrating decline that would warrant assisted living. A flush climbed her neck. It's the overall picture. Oh, the picture of a woman who manages her finances, keeps appointments, drives safely, cooks, hosts, neighbors me. I set my fork down. You've had me here for months. Because your townhouse isn't safe. I lived there 12 years without incident. I moved because you convinced Daniel, not because I needed oversight. Her morning mask cracked. She placed her fork beside the plate. I don't understand why you're making this difficult. We're trying to help. Are you? I asked softly. Or are you trying to help yourselves to my assets? Silence drew taut. The refrigerator hummed like a witness. How dare you, she whispered. I held her gaze. Then prove me wrong. Call Mr. Ashford. Tell him any future conversation waits until 2 independent physicians evaluate my competency as required by the clause in Daniel's power of attorney. Her eyes widened. The pancake steamed between us, blue as truth coming due now. How dare you accuse us of theft? Clara snapped. I'm not accusing anyone of theft. I'm asking a legitimate question. If this is truly about my well-being, why does it also give you full ownership of a house I helped purchase? Clara pushed back her chair. The scrape cut the room. I don't have to listen to this. You're being paranoid and hurtful. Am I? Then let's modify the arrangement. I'll consider assisted living, but the deed stays in both names, mine and Daniel's. You get your peace of mind, and I keep my financial security. Oh, that's not. The paperwork is already drawn up. Paperwork can be changed. She stared a long beat, something cold flickering across her face. You know what your problem is, Genevieve? You can't let go. Daniel has a wife now, a family. You want to keep control, keep him dependent on you emotionally and financially. The accusation landed like a fist. That's not true. Isn't it? You moved in, inserted yourself into our marriage, guilted him whenever he tried to build a separate life. This isn't about the house. It's about you refusing to accept your role has changed. Tears stung. I had struggled with Daniel's marriage, with feeling displaced. But that didn't entitle anyone to strip me of my independence or assets. Even if some of that were true, I said, voice steady over the ache, it wouldn't justify deception and financial exploitation. Clara laughed. Exploitation? You gave us that money freely. You moved in by choice. Nobody forced you. After you undercut my confidence, I said. The hints about forgetfulness, the safety monologues, the slow erosion of my autonomy. You've been building this for months, haven't you? Her face went still. For a breath, the mask fell. Gears showed. In that instant, I knew this wasn't about my well-being at all. You're being ridiculous, she said, but the honey had drained from her voice. What remained was steel plans questioned by a woman she'd underestimated. Am I? I stood, crossed to the kitchen drawer where I kept my documents. I withdrew a folder and laid it on the table. A copy of the deed listing Daniel Whitmore and Genevieve Whitmore, the canceled $20,000 check marked down payment, and a letter from my attorney highlighting the POA competency clause. Since we're discussing paperwork, I said, sliding the folder toward her, let's start with mine. For the record, let's talk about timing, Clara. I set a small notebook on the table, the one where I'd tracked specifics over the last 3 months. March 15th, I read. You said I left the stove on after breakfast, except I made toast in the toaster. The burners were never touched. Clara's face stayed smooth, but the gears were spinning. March 22nd. You told Daniel I'd forgotten our dinner plans and made other arrangements, except we never had dinner plans. You canceled that morning. I turned a page. April 3rd. You suggested I had trouble following conversation because I asked you to repeat yourself. I asked you to speak up. You were whispering. Genevieve, I don't know what you think you're proving. April 18th. You told Mrs. Ellery I'd gotten confused about the day. I'd asked whether it was Tuesday or Wednesday because I'd lost track recovering from the flu, which you didn't mention. She went quiet, calculating how much I knew and what I could prove. You've been building a competency narrative, I said. Every minor mistake, ordinary lapse, tired moment collected and presented as decline. You're being paranoid. Am I? Then why tell the wedding planner I was confused about details when I simply disagreed with your flowers? Her jaw tightened. And why tell Daniel I'd become fixated on money when I asked how my $20,000 was being used? Because you were inappropriate. Inappropriate how? I asked. By wanting to know where my own money went? It's not your money anymore, Genevieve. You gave it to us. You can't give a gift and then police it forever. A gift? I laughed without mirth. When did my contribution become a gift? The paperwork labels it a loan. I withdrew the folder from their closet, the one Clara assumed my forgetful fingers couldn't reach. A loan you and Daniel agreed to repay within 2 years with my name left on the deed as security until repayment. Oh. Color drained from her face. You weren't supposed to, Daniel said, he explained. Daniel says many things, I said. What matters is what's written. I fanned the documents across the kitchen table like a winning hand, the deed listing Daniel Whitmore and Genevieve Whitmore, the canceled check, memo down payment. the repayment schedule, and my attorney's letter noting the competency clause in the power of attorney. Outside, gulls cried over harbor. Inside, paper spoke, and paper was on my side. Loan agreement, deed with both names, power of attorney with a mental competency clause, and my personal favorite, the email from you to Daniel 2 months ago. Clara's eyes went wide. What email? The one where you wrote, "We need to move faster on the Genevieve situation. She's asking too many questions about the money, and I'm worried she'll cause problems with the refinancing." Silence stretched between us like a pier at low tide. "You went through my private messages," she breathed. "You went through my private life and dismantled it," I said. "I'd say we're even." Clara sat down hard, her composure finally cracking. "You don't understand the pressure we're under, Genevieve. The mortgage, the wedding, the baby coming. You needed my money and my property, but not me." "That's not true." Isn't it?" The plan was clear. Get me to sign away assets, park me in assisted living, and use the power of attorney so I can't make trouble. How long until you convinced Daniel I was too confused to manage visits? Tears streaked her makeup. "We weren't trying to hurt you. We just needed options. The baby, our future. We needed security. At the cost of mine. You're old, Genevieve. You don't need security the way we do. You don't have decades ahead, children to raise, careers to build, our expenses." There it was, the truth beneath the gaslighting. In Clara's math, my remaining years were worth less than their plans. "You're right," I said quietly. "I am getting older. I probably don't have decades left." Hope flickered across her face. "Which is exactly why," I continued, "I won't spend whatever time I have left being manipulated by someone who sees me as disposable." The hope vanished. "You're not signing," she said flatly. "Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. If you and Daniel want me out, you'll follow the law, prove I'm incompetent, not merely inconvenient." Then, Clara made her third mistake. She got mean. "You selfish, bitter old woman," she hissed, all pretense evaporating. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to Daniel? To our marriage?" I had been waiting for this the moment the mask dropped, and I could see the machinery under all that sweetness. Say it plainly, I thought. Let threat breathe in light. Outside, a gull cried. Inside, papers on the table answered for me already. "Enlighten me," I said calmly. "You're destroying his happiness. He's torn between his wife and his mother, and you're making him choose. What kind of mother does that to her own son? The kind who taught him that love doesn't come with price tags," I said. Clara laughed, sharp and bitter. "Love? You call this love? You're emotionally blackmailing him, making him feel guilty for having his own life. You've been doing it his whole life, haven't you?" "What do you mean?" "Daniel told me everything, Genevieve. How you guilted him into staying local for college instead of going to Stanford. How you had mysterious health scares whenever he tried to date seriously. How you made him feel responsible for your loneliness after his father died." Oh. Each word was designed to cut deep, and they did, because they carried threads of truth twisted into ugly shapes. "I supported his choice," I said. "After you cried about being all alone, about working so hard to put him through school, and wouldn't it be nice if he stayed close enough to visit regularly? I was lonely, scared of empty nest colliding with widowhood, but I never tried to chain his choices." "And the health scares?" Clara pressed. "The dizzy spells when he planned to move to Chicago with Sarah. Those episodes were real stress-induced, confirmed, but the timing betrayed me." "You've manipulated him for years, Genevieve, keeping yourself the center by playing the victim, and now you're doing it again." "I'm not." "Yes, you are. You're making him choose between his mother and his pregnant wife. You're forcing him to pick between your comfort and his family's future. What kind of person does that?" The accusations landed like blows, because there was enough truth to sting. Had I leaned on Daniel too long? Perhaps. But that did not justify theft by kindness. "Even if everything you said were true," I managed, "it wouldn't give you the right to defraud me." "Defraud?" Her voice rose toward a shriek. "We're taking care of you. We're making sure you have a safe place and medical care when you need it." By stripping my assets and warehousing me in a facility I never chose," I said. "By ensuring you don't end up alone, helpless, with no one to look after you." "I'd rather be alone," I answered, "than live with people who see me as a burden to be managed. Love without respect is custody, and I refuse custody." That's when Clara showed me how much she'd been holding back. "Fine," she said, voice deadly calm. You want to play hardball, Genevieve? Let's play hardball. You have 24 hours to reconsider your position. Or what? Or I tell Daniel about the pills. Ice sluiced through my veins. What pills? She smiled. The Xanax I found in your purse. A prescription that isn't yours. Medication you've been hiding from us. I stared as understanding rose. Those are Sarah Martinez's. She asked me to pick up her prescription because she couldn't get off work. I was dropping them to her this afternoon. Can you prove that? Sarah can confirm. Sarah Martinez, who moved to Phoenix last month? That's Sarah? The room tilted. Sarah had moved, yes. She'd asked me to pick up the refill before her flight, to save a trip. The bottle was still in my purse because we'd missed each other. You're going to claim I'm abusing medication that isn't mine. I'm going to express concern about your judgment and potential addiction. Combined with your recent paranoid accusations about financial exploitation, your documented confusion and memory problems, and your increasingly erratic behavior, she let the threat hang. Daniel will have no choice but to pursue legal guardianship for your protection. I sat down, the scope of it finally clear. She wasn't just building a case for assisted living, she was building a case for legal control. You planned this, I whispered. I planned for contingencies, Clara replied coolly. I hoped you'd be reasonable, but I prepared for the possibility you'd be difficult. Daniel will do whatever it takes to protect his family, and I'm his family now, Genevieve. You're just the woman who raised him. The cruelty took my breath. Now, she said, checking her watch, Mr. Ashford will be here at 2 o'clock. You can sign the papers voluntarily and move to Magnolia Harbor with dignity, or you can fight and find yourself declared incompetent by a court. She started to leave, then paused in the doorway. Oh, and if you even think about telling Daniel your version of this conversation, remember, you're a confused old woman with a drug problem and paranoid delusions. Her heels clicked down the hall. I sat still, listening to the house breathe, then reached for my phone and opened the email folder labeled Sequence and began forwarding everything to the detective at Charleston PD. If you believe dignity isn't disposable, subscribe and keep watching. The twist I set in motion yesterday is about to land. Who do you think he's going to believe? His pregnant wife or his increasingly unstable mother? Clara had said. After she left, I sat in the kitchen where I'd made breakfast, as if it were any other day, but everything had changed. She'd shown me the trap, a scaffold meant to collapse my life. But Clara made one final mistake. She forgot I've had 70 years to practice patience and 42 to study Daniel's patterns, his tells, evasions, soft spots. I understand the long game. At exactly 1:45 p.m., Mr. Ashford arrived with briefcase and papers. At 1:46, Clara learned some games are won before they begin. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, settling in, I understand you'd like to proceed with the Magnolia Harbor arrangements today. I smiled the way I've smiled at people who underestimate me. Actually, Mr. Ashford, I'd like to discuss something else entirely. Clara froze mid-pour over his coffee. Genevieve, we agreed. We agreed to nothing, I said, but I did spend my morning making calls. I reached into my handbag, the same one Clara thought proved a drug habit, and set a manila folder on the table. Are you familiar with our state's elder abuse statutes? He shifted. That isn't my specialty, Mrs. Whitmore. Then allow me. Financial exploitation of an elder is a felony, with restitution, and that's before conspiracy and fraud. Clara's cup rattled. What are you talking about? A scheme to separate me from assets and autonomy through manipulation and misleading paperwork. Oh! I opened the folder, spreading documents like cards saved for this moment. Here is the original loan agreement for the down payment repayable, not a gift. Here is the deed joint ownership, Daniel Whitmore and Genevieve Whitmore. Here is my attorney's letter outlining the competency clause that voids power of attorney while I'm of sound mind. The lawyer's posture stiffened. He scanned, then nodded slowly. These appear to be legitimate instruments. They are, I said, and this, I slid printed emails forward, is the thread between Clara and Daniel titled The Genevieve Situation, discussing how to get past my questions before refinancing. Silence widened. I set one final sheet down. That is the acknowledgement from the Charleston Police Department Elder Justice Unit confirming receipt of these documents yesterday at 5:12 p.m. If we're proceeding today, it will be at headquarters. Otherwise, I suggest counsel." Clara's smile cracked. Mr. Ashford closed his portfolio. "Perhaps," he said, "we should pause for now." Clara went white. "How did you get access to my private communications?" "The same way you've been accessing my medical information, my financial records, and my personal belongings. The difference is, what I did was legal." I pulled out a document. "This is a report from Dr. Sarah Chen, my physician for 12 years, confirming I show no signs of cognitive decline, dementia, or any condition that would impair decision-making." "When did you—" Clara started. "Yesterday afternoon, while you thought I was napping. I also spoke with Detective Rodriguez at the Charleston Police Department's Elder Justice Unit." Mr. Ashford began packing his briefcase. "Mrs. Whitmore, perhaps I should leave you two, privately." "Oh, but you're already involved," I said. "Knowingly participating in the financial exploitation of an elderly person makes you an accessory to a felony." He went pale. "I was told this was voluntary." "By whom? Did you speak with me directly about my wishes, or did you simply take Clara's word that I wanted to sign away my property rights?" Miss Clara Whitmore contacted our office and explained that you needed assistance with legal documents due to cognitive issues." Cognitive issues she documented how, exactly?" Clara found her voice. "You're blowing this out of proportion. We were trying to help." "Help yourselves, you mean?" I turned to the lawyer. "Sir, I'm 70, in excellent health, and fully competent to manage my affairs. No one has the right to make legal decisions for me without my explicit consent, regardless of what my daughter-in-law has told you about my supposed limitations." The notary edged toward the door. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'll need to consult my supervisor." "You do that," I said brightly, "and while you're at it, check your liability insurance. Mistakes may be covered. Fraud is another matter entirely." After he left, Clara and I sat in silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, almost desperate. "Genevieve, please, you don't understand our debt and expenses." "I understand perfectly. You bit off more than you could chew, and instead of facing consequences, you chose to solve your problems by robbing your husband's mother. It wasn't supposed to be robbery, it was redistribution. You don't need all that money at your age, and we have decades ahead of us. Children to raise." "There it is again," I said. "My age is the justification for your greed. Plain and simple." Clara was crying now, tears streaking her face. "What do you want from us, Genevieve? What will it take for you to let this go?" I stood and looked through the window at the garden I'd helped plant, the fence I'd helped repair, the life I'd helped them build. "I want my $20,000 back with interest. I want my name removed from the deed after repayment, and I want both of you to sign an acknowledgement that you attempted to defraud me. We can't pay you $20,000. We don't have that kind of money." "Then figure it out. Sell the new furniture you bought with my mortgage payments. Cancel Tuscany. Get a second job." I turned back and let her see the steel beneath the grandmother exterior. "If you refuse, I file charges and let a jury decide whether your desperation justifies elder abuse." That evening, Daniel finally came home. I heard his car, heard Clara rush to meet him, the urgent whispering. 20 minutes later, he knocked on the spare room door where I was packing. "Mom, can we talk?" I looked up from folding the cardigan I bought with my first Social Security check. "Of course, sweetheart, come in." He looked pale, exhausted, like a man discovering his life sat on quicksand. In a way, it did. "Clara told me about today the accusations you're making." "They're not accusations, Daniel. They're facts, backed by documentation." He sat on the bed. "Mom, I need you to understand. We never meant to hurt you." "But you did," I said. "The question is whether you meant to or simply didn't care about the consequences. That's not fair, isn't it? You let your wife declare me incompetent without speaking to my doctor. You planned to put me in assisted living without asking what I wanted. You were going to strip me of property rights and didn't even show up for the conversation." He flinched. "The gym? I was scared. I didn't know how to handle it." "So you let Clara handle it. She said she'd take care of everything, make it easy for you. To make this transition easier for everyone. To make it easier to rob me, you mean?" "It wasn't robbery." "God, Mom, you make it sound like we're criminals." I stopped packing and looked at my son, really looked at him. "Here are my terms," I said. "Repay in 30 days. Tomorrow, police. Meeting." At 42, he still had the same face he'd worn at 12 when he'd shattered Mrs. Patterson's window and tried to convince me it was an accident. What would you call it, Daniel? Taking someone's money under false pretenses, maneuvering to have them declared incompetent so you can control their assets, and systematically undermining their confidence and independence? We were trying to protect you. From what? From living my life, with my own money, in my own home? From being alone and vulnerable? From falling and lying there for hours with no one to help? From being taken advantage of by people who don't love me? I let the irony hang, because the only people who've tried to take advantage of me are you and your wife. I don't know how this got so messed up. It got messed up when you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a problem to solve. That's not true. Oh. When was the last time you asked what I wanted, Daniel? Not what Clara thinks I need. Not what you decided would be easiest, what I actually want for my own life. He was quiet a long time. I don't remember. Neither do I. And that's the tragedy. Somewhere along the way, my preferences became irrelevant to decisions about my life. Mom, what do you want us to do? Clara says you want us to repay the down payment, but we can't. It's gone. It's tied up in the house. Then sell the house. We can't sell. Clara's pregnant. We need the space. You need many things, Daniel, but none outrank my right to be treated with honesty and respect. He looked up, desperate. There has to be another way. Some compromise. The compromise was the original loan agreement. I help with the down payment. You repay me over 2 years. Clara decided that wasn't enough. She wanted it all: my money, my property rights, my independence. She's scared, Mom. We both are. The baby, the expenses, the pressure. And you decided to make your fear my problem to solve. His tears came. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this. I sat beside him and took his hand, as I had 1,000 times when the world seemed big. You start, I said, by choosing right over easy, and by coming with me tomorrow to the police. Daniel, I love you more than life itself. I always have, and I always will. But love doesn't mean letting people hurt you without consequences. What are you going to do? I'm moving out tomorrow. I've already arranged a rental across town. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I can't live with people who see me as a burden and a bank account. And the money? I squeezed his hand. You have 30 days to deliver a repayment plan. If you can't, the court will sort it out. He nodded, miserable. I understand. I hope you do, sweetheart. This isn't only about money. It's about whether you'll stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. After Daniel left, I finished packing. At 70, I would start again. It wasn't the retirement I had planned, but it was better than surrender. And Clara still didn't know about the call I'd placed to her mother that afternoon. 3 weeks later, I was settled in a small one-bedroom overlooking Colonial Lake, a building full of active seniors who played cards, organized potlucks, and looked out for one another. I'd heard nothing from Daniel or Clara since moving out. No calls, no texts, no apology. The silence told me everything about their priorities. Mrs. Whitmore, you have a visitor, said Miss Alvarez over the lobby intercom. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw a woman about my age, holding a plate under aluminum foil. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Patricia Winters, Clara's mother. I opened the door, curious. Patricia was elegant in the practiced way of old Charleston families, but her eyes were tired, and contrition bent her shoulders. Please come in, I said. Tea? That would be lovely. Lemon if you have it. We sat in the small living room while late light slanted across the park I was already planning to help tend in spring. Mrs. Whitmore, Patricia began, I owe you an apology. Please call me Genevieve. What could you possibly need to apologize for? For failing to raise my daughter better than this, she exhaled. When you called 3 weeks ago and told me what Clara had done, my first instinct was to defend her. No mother wants to believe her child capable of cruelty. But I visited her townhouse yesterday, she said, and what I found frightened me. She uncovered the plate. Lemon bars. Truth. May I explain now? But, I asked. Patricia folded her hands. I've known Clara for 34 years, and if I'm honest, I've seen this pattern before. She sighed. When Clara was in college, there was an incident with her roommate's credit cards. Clara said it was a misunderstanding that she'd borrowed money and intended to pay it back. We believed her, hired a lawyer, and made it go away. My chest tightened. There were other incidents? Her first marriage ended when her husband discovered withdrawals from his elderly father's account. Again, Clara insisted it was temporary help, but the bank records told another story. I stared at Patricia, feeling a larger puzzle click into place. Daniel doesn't know, does he? She made me promise never to tell. She said she'd learned that she was different now. I wanted to believe her. Patricia's voice lowered. But now I don't. She reached into her purse and set a thick envelope on the table. This is $20,000, Genevieve. Cash. I looked at it as if it might strike. I can't take your money. Yes, you can and you will. My daughter stole from you. As her mother, I'm responsible for making it right. That isn't how responsibility works. In my family it is. My late husband built a business on integrity. I failed to teach Clara that lesson. Her mouth trembled. I won't compound that failure by letting her victim pay. Tears stung my eyes. This is generous, but what about Daniel, their house? Daniel will figure it out. He's a good man who made bad choices because he trusted the wrong person. The house will sort itself out once Clara realizes money isn't coming from you. What do you mean? Patricia's smile was sad. Clara married Daniel because she thought he came from money. Your clothes, your gifts, your help with the down payment. She assumed you were wealthy. I'm comfortable, not wealthy. Exactly. When she sees there's no inheritance, no golden goose, she'll move on to easier targets. The certainty chilled me. You think she'll leave Daniel? I think Clara follows opportunity. If Daniel can't provide the life she wants, she'll find someone who can. I thought of the child she carried, of Daniel's heart if his marriage collapsed, of a grandchild I might never meet. The baby will be better off, Patricia said, than with a mother who treats people as resources to be exploited. Trust me, Genevieve, some people can change, but Clara isn't one of them. After Patricia left, I sat with the envelope on my kitchen table, feeling like I was holding something heavier than cash. The money represented Patricia's attempt to balance scales Clara had tipped toward cruelty and greed, and something else, the knowledge that Daniel was married to a woman who had made a career of financial exploitation. That made my next decision easy. I picked up the phone and dialed Detective Rodriguez. Detective, it's Genevieve Whitmore. I've reconsidered your suggestion about filing formal charges against my daughter-in-law. The knock on Daniel's door came at 7 a.m., Tuesday, just as Clara was dressing for her prenatal appointment. I know because Rodriguez called afterward to tell me how it went. Mrs. Clara Whitmore, you're under arrest for elder financial abuse, fraud, and attempted coercion. You have the right to remain silent. Apparently Clara's first words were, "This is Genevieve's fault, isn't it?" Even facing cuffs, she couldn't own her choices. Daniel called that afternoon, voice hollow with shock. "Mom, I need to understand what's happening. Clara says you had her arrested out of spite. Your wife tried to steal my savings and have me declared incompetent to control my assets," I said. "The arrest isn't spite, it's justice. But she's pregnant. She's carrying my child." "I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry this is happening now, but Clara made her choices. The lawyer says she could go to prison." "That's possible. Elder abuse is a felony. How can you be so calm about destroying our family?" The words stung, but I'd expected them. "I didn't destroy your family. Clara did, when she chose crimes against me. She says she never meant to hurt you, that it's a misunderstanding about the loan. What about the emails titled The Genevieve Situation? The months of notes framing me as confused? The threat to claim I had a drug problem if I didn't cooperate?" Silence breathed on the line. "Daniel, your wife is a predator. She's done this before." "What do you mean?" "I mean you need to ask hard questions about the woman you married and whether you ever actually knew her." Patricia confirmed prior incidents, credit cards in college, withdrawals from an elderly father-in-law. "I have affidavits. Meet me 9 a.m. at station. Bring questions. Bring courage. Truth won't spare us, but it will free us." That evening, Patricia Winters called me. "Genevieve, thank you for pressing charges. I know it wasn't easy." It was the hardest thing I've ever done," I said, "but I couldn't let her do this to someone else's family." "The police contacted me today," Patricia continued. "They're looking into Clara's past relationships, other potential victims. It seems your case opened a much larger investigation." My stomach dropped. "How much larger?" Her first husband wasn't the only one. There were at least 3 elderly men she dated briefly. Each reported mysterious financial problems while seeing her. And there was an incident at the assisted living facility where she worked before meeting Daniel. I felt sick. She worked at an assisted living facility? For 6 months, fired for suspected theft from residents' accounts. No charges, insufficient evidence. The scope clarified like a sinister map. Clara hadn't targeted me because I was Daniel's mother. She targeted me because I was an older woman with resources she wanted to control. Does Daniel know? I told him this afternoon. He's processing. Processing. My 42-year-old son was processing that he'd married someone who profited by exploiting the elderly. How is he handling it? As you'd expect, devastated, angry, blaming everyone except Clara. But the evidence is overwhelming, Genevieve. He can't deny it forever. That night I couldn't sleep. I thought of the baby she carried, the innocent life about to be born into chaos. I thought of Daniel, whose world was crumbling. I thought of others Clara had harmed, but mostly I thought of the choice I'd faced 3 weeks ago. Let her get away with it or fight back and accept the consequences. I chose to fight. The ripples would last years, but it was the right choice. With people who treat kindness as weakness, the most loving act is a boundary with consequences attached. My phone rang at midnight. Daniel's name lit the screen. Mom? I'm here, sweetheart. I'm sorry. His voice was raw. I'm so sorry for everything, for not believing you, for not protecting you, for choosing her over you. Daniel, you don't have to choose between us. You only have to choose between right and wrong. I think I might lose everything, Mom. The house, my marriage, my family. Integrity doesn't rebuild houses, but it rebuilds a life, brick by brick, in daylight again. Maybe, I said softly, but you'll still have the most important thing. What's that? Your integrity, and the chance to be the kind of man your father would be proud of. He cried then, deep sobs from somewhere primal and broken. And I cried with him for the innocence we'd both lost, for the family we thought we were building, for the grandchild who would grow beneath the shadow of this betrayal. Yet, under the grief lived something else. Relief, because for the first time in months, my son was seeing clearly. That meant there was hope for us both. 6 months later, I stood in the Charleston courthouse as Clara pled guilty to 3 counts of elder financial abuse. She looked smaller without the designer armor, no glam squad, no gloss, a suit 2 shades too bright for the room. Daniel sat 2 rows behind me with Patricia Winters. He filed for divorce 3 weeks after the arrest, when the full map of Clara's history became public. The baby, a little girl, was born healthy despite the noise of their unraveling. Your Honor, her attorney said, my client regrets her actions and asks mercy considering her circumstances as a new mother. Judge Martinez did not blink. Mrs. Whitmore, you targeted vulnerable elders. These were not lapses. They were a calculated pattern spanning years. Clara cried the same practiced tears she'd used on Daniel and me. Mrs. Whitmore, the judge continued, you pled guilty to defrauding Genevieve Whitmore of $20,000, attempting to coerce her into surrendering property rights, and making false statements about her mental capacity. The court sentences you to 18 months in state prison, followed by 3 years probation and full restitution. 18 months. Brief. For the damage she'd done, but more than I'd expected. After sentencing, Daniel and I stepped into the spring light. How do you feel? He asked. Tired, I said, but free. I keep thinking about the baby, he murmured. They'd named her Emma Genevieve Whitmore, Daniel's attempt to honor me. Emma will be better off knowing truth than living with lies, I said. She'll have you, Patricia, and me if you'll let me. He stopped and faced me. Mom, I need you to know something. When Clara insisted you were incompetent, a part of me wanted to believe her. The honesty hurt, but I appreciated it. Because that would have been easier, he said, than facing the truth about my marriage, my judgment, the person I chose to build a life with. Daniel, I let her make me see you as a burden instead of a blessing. I let her convince me that loving you betrayed her. I chose comfort over courage, and it nearly cost me what matters. I took his hand, the same hand I'd held crossing streets, at graduation, when he called to say he was marrying. We all make mistakes, sweetheart. The question is what we do with the lessons. He swallowed. What I learned is my mother is the strongest, smartest, most resilient woman I know. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. 3 weeks later, Daniel brought Emma to my apartment. She was beautiful dark hair like her father, Patricia's elegant nose, eyes that saw everything. "She's perfect," I whispered, holding my granddaughter. "Mom," he said, "I've been thinking about the house. I can't afford the mortgage without Clara's income. And I don't want to live there anymore, too many bad memories." I looked up from Emma's face. "What will you do?" "I want to sell and give you half the proceeds. It's not exactly what you're owed, but it's a start." "Daniel, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. You taught me that family means taking care of each other." I forgot what that meant. 6 months later, Daniel and Emma moved into a small house 3 blocks from me. He took a second job to make ends meet, and he came for dinner twice a week. We'd sit on my balcony while Emma played on a blanket, talking about everything except Clara. Patricia Winters became an unexpected friend, stopping by to help with Emma and share stories. One afternoon, as we watched Emma take her first steps across my living room, Patricia said, "This little one will be just fine, not despite everything, but because of it. She'll grow up knowing actions have consequences, that integrity matters, and that the women in her family don't back down." I smiled, thinking about the letter I'd written Emma, one she wouldn't read until she was old enough to understand. I told her the story, her mother's choices, the difference between love and manipulation, and the power of refusing to be anyone's victim. Watching Emma toddle toward the window, I realized Clara had given me a gift. She reminded me who I am, a woman who doesn't back down, who protects what matters, and who proves 70 isn't powerless. If my story moved you, stand with me. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and leave me a comment addressed to Genevieve. Tell me where you're watching from and what part gave you the most strength. I read every word. If you've faced manipulation in your own family, share one boundary you set and how it changed things. Your wisdom could be the rope someone else needs to climb out. My advice? Document everything. Ask questions in writing. Keep your own copies of deeds, loan agreements, and medical notes. Add safeguards competency clauses, trusted witnesses, second opinions. Trust your gut. Silence it for no one. Build allies before you need them. A primary doctor, a calm attorney, a neighbor who notices. Say what is true, even if your voice shakes. Choose integrity over ease, daylight over secrecy, and consequences over polite surrender. If you're walking through a storm right now, drop me a line below, and I'll reply with encouragement. And if you're safe today, be someone else's safe place. Check on an elder, teach a granddaughter about boundaries, and remind a son that love never requires control. See you in the next chapter where dignity doesn't whisper, it testifies. Bring a friend along.